Welcome back to Let's Build a Tetris-Like. Alright, so last time I started talking about movement and then I cut it off short. And I think I just vaguely glanced over this. But it was because I was in the Tetramino base class, and really a lot of the direction is being chosen by the player board itself. So the set Tetramino move direction, I think I went over this before. But the difference that I was talking about in my little shitty drawing, was this. I just made this change to be like minus 22.5, and just rotated that circle by 22.5 degrees so that you have directions that look like drawing thing. All right, so you have these 8 directions. So I want to move based on these being the vectors. But I wanted to have a buffer of 22.5 degrees. So if I want to move to the right and not up or down, I'm cutting this in half so that the direction is the input between this positive 22.5 and negative. And before it was between these like regular 45-degree angles. So that's what I was getting at, and that's what all these 22.5s and stuff are. Clear those out of the way. Whereas before this was like 0 to 45 and whatnot. I also changed it to if-else statements, 2 different ones for if I'm in the positive or the negative direction. It doesn't really matter in practice as long as you go from smallest to biggest. But if you go from like biggest to smallest, it has a potential of overwriting itself over and over again. So anyway, so that's there. We're just checking the angle to input. Where's the input location? Oh yeah, this was part of a refactor. So I added a new function that all it does is just sets the input location, and then input lock is the publicly available. Actually, I think it's protected, but it's available to everything. It's just something that I'm always going to want to know, so I made it its own variable up in the protected section here. So yeah, I'm always going to have access to that. Oh wait, was I in the wrong spot there? So I'm getting the input location and setting it. So get input location is where I moved the code for checking if the player controller is there. If it is there, I'm getting the hit under cursor, checking it against the visibility channel. I do not want it to sweep. I think that's what that was. Oh, trace complex now. Yeah, I think I covered this before, but then I'm getting the output result and taking the location of it because I don't actually need all the information that's in an out hit result or the F hit result, because that gives you information about like the actor and what it hit and everything like that. All I'm looking for is the location. So I'm getting it, setting the input location, setting it here, and then showing input location. This is where I'm going to have the Niagara thing. I covered all this in a previous video, but I just wanted to bring attention to this code here, where I'm just rotating everything by 22.5 degrees to change the input. So then for the Tetramino in play, you're supposed to, I mean, it's good practice to have null checks, But I'm actually performing a null check in check set in play. So I know I'm always going to have a Tetramino in play at this point. So yeah, I mean it's best practice. There should be a null check there, but I'm a solo dev. I know that it's happening in check set in play. So as long as check set in play is being called before you're accessing Tetramino in play, then you know it's good. But I needed to get the input location before I called it, so I just, instead of having the Tetramino in play call right afterwards, um, I had to like stick some stuff in between it. So those are the kinds of things you can get away with as a solo dev. It's, I mean, it doesn't really matter. But if someone else was working on this with me, I'd probably want to have a null check here because if they didn't have like intimate knowledge of the code and know that it's being checked for nulls up here, um, it could cause confusion. So just something to keep in mind. And then I'm adding the debug message. So that's up in the upper left hand of the screen. All right, so back to the Tetramino base. Have breakpoints set here. So we're getting the direction. That is a plus or negative number between 0 and 4. And so we're switching based on that. So in case 0, we're moving to the right. And we're setting two different timers, X and Y timers. So the movement of them is independent. And to set a timer, you just take timer handle, which all it is just a declaration, F timer handle, move X and Z. And then you need the world object. I think that's what it's called. In out handle. Great. I wish it would go. I wish IntelliSense would sense like which one I actually chose here. But yeah, I think this is just a world reference object. Yeah, because it's definitely not in rate. Delegate. Oh, maybe it's the delegate. No, it's this one, user class. So we're setting the timer handle, and then we need a user class, which is just the class that you're in. Since I'm in the pawn right now. And then the delegate is the actual function that's being called. Okay, so that IntelliSense is being useless right now, which I'm telling it to move right. I have the time between moves, which is just like how quickly it will move. This will be important in when I have multiple control schemes, because right now, since I'm doing the auto rotation, I want it to move quickly. But if we have the blocks dropping like a like standard Tetris, I'll want it to be slower at first and then have the ability to change it over time. So that's what this time between moves thing is. It can it's going to be, it doesn't really matter right now, but in the future I'll want to have access to this as a variable to change it. All right. So that's in case 0 to move to the right. And then, so for all the positive ones, so now we can move right and up if it's in the case of 1, direction 1, and so on and so forth. I think I mentioned in the last video, oh yeah, and then the negative case is just for moving down and left and right. Now, I think I mentioned in the last video that so we're doing the movement. What happens next? 1 second while I gather my thoughts. Ah, yes, now I remember. Okay, so down here and move. I already talked about this in the last video. I actually got ahead of myself. But I refactored all these because I had a whole bunch of repeating code, and the only difference was where we were actually setting the position. So I pulled all this repeated code out, stuck it into just a move function that is basically just going to be a subroutine of move left, right, up, and down. All right, so let's see here. We covered movement, covered auto rotation. I believe that was in the last video. And let's go over, look at Trello. Okay, so that covers moving them towards the player input. I discussed some of the refactoring that I did. And cover collision in a different video, I think. Yeah, because that'll need some explanation. All right, so after all that, what does this look like? Ultimately, now you have the Tetramino moving towards the player input based on all these cardinal directions. There's a small buffer zone that will prevent the Tetramino from losing its mind when it can't get exactly to where the player input is. And that's about it for movement. In the next video, we'll cover the dropping and the collision itself. So in a little preview, this is what it looks like. And that's what it will play like on mobile. And well, and I'm on PC right now. But this is what the one finger input is going to entail. Auto rotate, that's what I call it. Okay, so I'm going to end this here. I hope you enjoyed this video. If I'm going too fast or too slow, or you want more detail or less detail, let me know in the comments. I'm not like fully in the swing of making videos for this yet. So I think eventually I'll land on like a format that I like. But mostly my workflow right now is, make some code, test it, make sure it's working, and then go over an overview of it in a video. Also, if you're interested in like me streaming or something, I don't know. It's probably boring as hell to watch somebody code all day. But if anyone wants to hang out or something, I don't have a ton of time to do that. Probably on like Fridays, late Fridays, or like the weekends. I do have a day job. So, but yeah, if there's anything you'd like to see or not see as much of, just let me know in the comments and I'll try to accommodate. I hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you in the next one. Or I will forget to hit the right button.